The Great Hall of Axiom Prime stretched for miles in every direction. Crystal walls rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Thousands of beings from 47 different species sat in their assigned sections. Some had scales, some had tentacles, some were made of living light, all of them were old, all of them were powerful, and all of them believed they understood how the universe worked. Ambassador of the Hegemony stood at the central platform. His silver skin reflected the light of 100 suns that burned in the display screens around him. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Today was a simple matter. A new species had been discovered, and the Galactic Command needed to classify them. "Bring up the file on the 3rd planet of the Sol system," said. His voice echoed through the hall. "The species calls themselves humans." The display changed. A blue and green world appeared, spinning slowly. Clouds covered parts of its surface. Oceans sparkled in the light of a yellow sun. It was beautiful in a simple way, like a child's drawing of what a planet should look like. "Population 8 billion, the computer announced. "Technology level Category 9, pre-emergence. The species has achieved basic space travel within their own system. They have landed on their moon and sent simple machines to nearby planets. Their fastest ships travel at less than 1% of light speed. They have no knowledge of dimensional folding, no access to zero-point energy, no understanding of manipulation." A sound passed through the hall. It was something between laughter and pity. The beings of the Galactic Command had all been young once. They had all struggled with primitive rockets and chemical fuels. That was millions of years ago for most of them. Looking at humanity was like looking at their own distant past. "What else?" asked. "The species is not unified. They have divided their world into approximately 200 separate territories that they call nations. These nations often fight wars against each other. They burn fossil fuels for energy. They argue about whether their own climate is changing. They have weapons capable of destroying their own civilization, but not of threatening any member of this command." More sounds of amusement, a species that fought itself. A species that was destroying its own planet. A species that thought nuclear bombs were powerful. How cute, how sad, how utterly helpless. "Classification?" asked, though everyone already knew the answer. "Category 9, lowest possible ranking, pre-emergence, not a threat, not a concern, recommended action, minimal monitoring, 1 observation satellite, report if technology level changes." Nodded, this was routine. The Galactic Command discovered primitive species all the time. Most of them destroyed themselves before they ever reached the stars. The ones that survived usually took another few thousand years to become interesting. Humanity would be no different. "The classification is approved," announced. "Earth is officially designated as a Category 9 world, helpless. This session is." "Wait," a deep voice cut through the hall. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. He was massive, covered in dark red scales with eyes like burning coals. Commander L of the Empire rose from his seat. "The request access to this system." Frowned, he knew what this meant. There were harvesters. They found primitive worlds and took what they wanted. Resources, labor. Sometimes the entire population of a planet shipped off to work in factories and mines until they died. "For what purpose?" asked, though he already knew. "Resource collection," L said simply. "The planet has significant mineral deposits, large amounts of fresh water, and 8 billion workers who require no training for simple labor." Silence fell over the hall. Many species in the Galactic Command found the practices distasteful, but they were powerful. They had 1,000 warships. Their technology was among the best in the galaxy, and technically, harvesting primitive species was not against any law. "The humans have done nothing to us," someone protested. It was a small voice from one of the lesser species. "They exist in a galaxy where power matters," L replied. "They are weak, we are strong, this is the way of things." Sighed, he did not like but he could not stop them. "The request is noted. The Empire may proceed at their discretion. This session is closed." As the beings began to leave, L smiled with a mouth full of sharp teeth. 8 billion humans, a planet full of resources, and not a single thing in the universe that could stop him from taking it all. 3 days later, a fleet of 300 warships jumped toward the Sol system. Each ship was the size of a city. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a planet. They moved through dimensional folds, crossing light years in seconds, emerging in the darkness between stars. On the lead ship, Commander Al reviewed the mission briefing. He was younger than El, but just as cruel. He had led many harvesting operations. This would be his easiest yet. "Time to Earth," he asked. "6 hours at standard approach speed," his navigator replied. "Good, begin scanning for population centers. I want the largest cities identified first. We will start collection there." The fleet moved forward. Neptune passed on their screens, then Uranus. Then Saturn with its beautiful rings. They did not stop to admire the view. They had seen 1,000 worlds. Beauty meant nothing to them, only power, only resources, only the endless hunger of their empire. On Earth, in a facility that did not appear on any map, Admiral Wei stared at a screen. She was small and thin, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. The screen showed 300 red dots moving toward Earth, the fleet. "They are coming," said the officer beside her. Nodded slowly. She had known this day would arrive. They all had. For 40 years they had prepared. For 40 years they had hidden. For 40 years they had let the galaxy believe that humanity was primitive and weak and helpless. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. "Initiate Protocol Prometheus," Admiral said quietly. "Contact all fleet commanders. Tell them the waiting is over." Deep in the asteroid belt, far from any watching eyes, lights began to turn on. Engines that had never fired began to warm up. 2,000 ships that had never been seen began to wake from their long sleep. The thought they were coming to harvest a helpless world. They had no idea that they were flying into a trap that had been set before most of them were born. Admiral watched the red dots move closer. She felt no fear, only a cold, patient anger that had been building for decades. "They called us helpless," she said softly. "Let us show them what helpless really means." The truth about humanity began in 1987 in a small laboratory at MIT. Was 26 years old. She had messy brown hair, glasses that were always dirty, and a mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. For 3 years, she had been working on a problem that her professors said was impossible. They told her she was wasting her time. They told her to focus on something practical. They told her the laws of physics were fixed and absolute and could never be changed. Did not listen. On a cold November night, while the rest of the university slept, finished her equations. She stared at the papers spread across her desk. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. She had found it, not just a way to travel faster than light, not just a way to fold space and time. She had found something far more dangerous. She had found a way to rewrite the rules of reality itself. The next morning made a phone call. By that evening, men in dark suits had arrived at her laboratory. They took her papers, they took her notes, they took herself, and then they made her an offer she could not refuse. The world could never know what she had discovered. Not yet, maybe not ever, because if humanity revealed itself to the galaxy, it would be announcing its existence to powers beyond imagination. Powers that might see a young species as a threat to be destroyed, or worse, as a resource to be harvested. Understood, she had always known that the universe was bigger than humanity. Now she knew it was also more dangerous. Within a year, the Terran Defense Initiative was born. It was the greatest secret in human history. Every major government on Earth knew about it. The Americans and the Russians, the Chinese and the Europeans. Countries that had been enemies for generations came together in the shadows. They had no choice. The survival of their entire species was at stake. For the public, nothing changed. NASA continued to launch its rockets. Space agencies around the world continued their slow exploration of the solar system. Satellites went up, probes went out. Astronauts floated in small space stations and looked down at Earth. It all looked normal. It all looked primitive. That was exactly the point. Meanwhile, in places that did not exist on any map, humanity began to build. The first shipyard was constructed inside a hollowed asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. It took 5 years to complete. When it was finished, they built another, and another, and another. Soon there were 12 shipyards hidden among the rocks and ice, producing ships that used physics the rest of the galaxy had never imagined. Led the research, she was no longer young. Her hair turned gray. Lines appeared on her face, but her mind remained sharp and her discovery grew more powerful with each passing year. The other species of the galaxy used dimensional folding. They bent space and time to travel from one place to another. It was clever. It was effective. It was also limited. You could only bend the universe so far before it snapped back. Humanity's technology was different. It did not bend reality. It changed reality. In the space around a human ship, the laws of physics could be altered. Gravity could be reversed. Light could be made to stand still. The strong nuclear force could be weakened until atoms fell apart. The universe had rules, but had found the code that those rules were written in, and code could be rewritten. By 2010, humanity had 100 ships. By 2020, they had 500. By 2027, when the first alien observation satellite arrived in the solar system, they had nearly 2,000. Each one was hidden. Each one was silent. Each one was waiting. The observation satellite saw exactly what the Galactic Command expected to see. Chemical rockets struggling to reach orbit. Space stations held together with duct tape and hope. Astronauts who thought walking on Mars would be the achievement of a lifetime. A primitive species that posed no threat to anyone. The satellite did not see the ships hiding in the shadow of asteroids. It did not detect the shipyards buried deep inside dead moons. It did not notice the energy signatures of 2,000 vessels that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. Admiral Wei had been a young officer when she first learned the truth. She remembered the day clearly. She had been called into a room with no windows and told that everything she believed about human space travel was a lie. She had seen the ships. She had seen the weapons. She had seen what humanity could really do. She had also seen the recordings. The Terran Defense Initiative had been watching the galaxy for decades. They had intercepted communications. They had observed the Galactic Command from afar. They knew about the elder species and their great halls of crystal. They knew about and their harvesting fleets. They knew that the universe was a dark and dangerous place where the weak were consumed by the strong. So humanity had chosen to appear weak. It was the greatest deception in history. Now, as watched the fleet approach, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, yes, but also anticipation. For 40 years, she had prepared for this moment. For 40 years, she had wondered if the deception would hold. For 40 years, she had hoped that humanity would never have to reveal its true strength. That hope was over now. They were coming to harvest her world. They thought they were attacking sheep. They did not know they were walking into a den of wolves. "All ships report ready," her communications officer said. "Fleet is powered and waiting for orders." Nodded. In the asteroid belt, 2,000 ships hung in the darkness. Their crews were at their stations. Their weapons were armed. Their reality-altering engines hummed with power that would have seemed like magic to any other species in the galaxy. "Tell them to prepare for dimensional breach," ordered. "We will intercept the fleet at the following coordinates." She entered the numbers, just past Mars, far enough from Earth to protect the civilian population, close enough to make a statement. "And tell them one more thing," added. Her voice was cold and hard. "Tell them that today humanity stops hiding. Today we show the galaxy what we really are." In 2,000 ships, crews received the message. They had trained their whole lives for this. They had lived in secret, worked in secret, existed in secret. Now, finally, the secret was about to come out. The thought they were coming to collect resources. They had no idea they were about to become a message to the Galactic Command. A message to every species that had ever looked at a primitive world and seen only prey. Humanity was done pretending. Commander Al stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Hunger. It was a good name for a vessel. The Empire was always hungry. Hungry for resources, hungry for workers, hungry for worlds to consume. And now, Earth would feed that hunger. The fleet had entered the Sol system 2 hours ago. They had passed the outer planets without stopping. There was nothing of interest there, just ice and gas and worthless rock. The prize was ahead. The blue world. The planet full of primitive creatures who did not even know they were about to become property. "Scan the system again," Al ordered. He was careful by nature. Other commanders had grown lazy over the centuries. They had forgotten that the universe could still surprise them. Al had not forgotten. He had survived 100 harvesting operations by always checking twice. "Scanning," his sensor officer replied. The screens flickered with data. "I am detecting the same readings as before, primitive satellites in orbit around Earth. A small space station with 6 life forms aboard. Several automated probes scattered throughout the system. No military vessels, no defensive platforms, no energy signatures above Category 9 baseline." Al nodded, just as the Galactic Command had reported. A helpless world with helpless creatures who had no idea what was coming. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Continue approach. Prepare harvesting pods for deployment." I want the first wave of collection ships ready within the hour." The fleet moved forward. Mars appeared on their screens, a dead red world that the humans had barely begun to explore. Beyond it, Earth grew larger, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, billions of workers waiting to be taken. They were 30 minutes from optimal range when space broke open. There was no warning. One moment the void ahead was empty. The next moment it was filled with ships. They did not fold out of dimensional space like civilized vessels. They did not appear through any technology that Al recognized. Instead, reality itself seemed to crack like glass, and from the cracks, human warships emerged. There were so many of them. Al's mind could not process the number at first. 200? No. 500? No, more than 1,000, more than 1,500. The count kept rising as more cracks appeared and more ships poured through. "What is happening?" Al demanded. His voice was not as steady as he wanted it to be. "Unknown vessels," his sensor officer said. Her voice was shaking. "Unknown energy signatures, unknown propulsion systems, unknown everything. Commander, these readings do not match anything in our database." "That is impossible. We have every species in the galaxy." "Then these ships are not from the galaxy." For a long moment no one spoke. The human fleet had finished arriving. More than 2,000 ships hung in space before them. They were smaller than vessels, but there was something about them that made Al's scales itch. Something wrong, something dangerous. A transmission came through. Every screen on the Endless Hunger showed the same image, a human female in a military uniform. She had gray hair and cold eyes and a face that showed no fear at all. "Attention fleet," she said. Her voice was calm. "This is Admiral Way of the Terran Defense Navy. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. You will power down your weapons and submit to inspection, or you will be destroyed." Al stared at the screen. His brain could not connect what he was seeing with what he knew. The Galactic Command had declared Earth helpless. The Galactic Command was never wrong. This had to be some kind of mistake, some kind of trick. "This is Commander Al of the Empire," he replied. "You are primitives. You have no authority. You will surrender your planet and your population, or we will take them by force." The human admiral smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We were hoping you would say that." Al cut the transmission. "All ships attack pattern dominance. Show these animals what real power looks like." The fleet opened fire. 300 ships unleashed their weapons at once. Lances that could crush a moon. Plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars. Quantum disruptors that tore apart matter at the molecular level. Thousands of weapons streaked toward the human formation. And then the impossible happened. The weapons slowed down. Al watched in disbelief as torpedoes that should have been traveling at a significant fraction of light speed began to drift like leaves in the wind. The lances bent in impossible directions. The quantum disruptors flickered and died. And then, impossibly, horribly, the weapons began to turn around. "What is happening?" someone screamed. Al had no answer. He could only watch as his own weapons came racing back toward his fleet. In the space around the human ships, the laws of physics had changed. Cause and effect had been reversed. Motion had been turned backward. Reality itself had been rewritten. The first wave of returning fire hit the fleet like the fist of an angry god. Ships that had conquered worlds exploded in seconds. The Endless Hunger shook as vessels around it vanished in balls of fire. Al was thrown from his command chair. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and through the chaos he could hear his crew screaming in terror. "Shields at 40%, someone reported. "We have lost 97 ships in the first exchange. The enemy has not fired a single weapon. They used our own weapons against us." Al pulled himself up. He looked at the tactical display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Nearly a third of his fleet was gone, and the human ships had not taken a single hit. They had not even tried to dodge. They had simply changed the rules of the universe and let them destroy themselves. "Return fire," he ordered, but his voice was weak now. "All ships return fire." Another barrage of weapons launched toward the human fleet, and once again the weapons slowed, stopped, and turned around. Once again, ships died by their own hand. Al finally understood. This was not a battle. This was not even a war. This was an execution, and the executioners were a species that the Galactic Command had dismissed as harmless primitives. "What are you?" he whispered to the empty bridge. On the screen, Admiral appeared again. Her smile was wider now. "We are humanity," she said, "and you should have left us alone." The battle lasted less than an hour, if it could even be called a battle. Commander Al watched his fleet die around him. Every weapon they fired came back to destroy them. Every attempt to escape was blocked. Ships that tried to enter dimensional fold found that dimensional folding no longer worked in this region of space. The humans had turned off that part of physics like a child turning off a light switch. "Attempt retreat," Al ordered. "All ships full reverse, get us out of their range." The surviving vessels turned and ran. They were the greatest warships in the Empire. They had never retreated from anything. But there was no shame in retreating from the impossible. The human ships followed, and as they followed, reality warped around them like heat waves rising from hot ground. One cruiser, the Bone Collector, found itself in a zone where gravity had reversed. The ship was suddenly falling upward, toward nothing, accelerating faster and faster until its hull cracked from the stress. Another ship, the Crimson Dawn, flew through a region where the speed of light had been reduced to a few meters per second. It was frozen in place, unable to move, while human vessels passed by without slowing down. But the worst fate came to the dreadnought Eternal Conquest. Its captain, desperate to escape, pushed his dimensional drive to maximum power. He tried to tear open a fold in space and flee to the safety of territory. Inside the zone of human control, dimensional folding did not work the way it was supposed to. Instead of opening a path through space, the drive opened a path through something else. For 3 terrible seconds, the Eternal Conquest existed in 11 dimensions at once. The crew saw things that no living mind was meant to see. Then the ship collapsed inward, crushed into a point smaller than an atom, taking 3,000 with it. Al saw it happen. He saw his comrades vanish into nothing, and he finally understood what he was facing. This was not advanced technology. This was not a different approach to science. This was something far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans had found a way to change the fundamental rules of the universe. They could make gravity push instead of pull. They could make light stand still. They could make dimensions fold in ways that should not be possible. They had found the source code of reality, and they could edit it at will. "All ships cease fire," Al ordered. His voice was broken. His spirit was broken. "Power down weapons, signal surrender." Around him, his surviving officers stared in shock. They had never surrendered. In 10,000 years of expansion, they had never lost a battle so completely. They had never faced an enemy they could not understand, could not fight, could not defeat. But there was no point in continuing. Al had started with 300 ships. He now had 62, and the humans had not taken a single loss. Their ships floated in the void, untouched, undamaged, surrounded by the wreckage of the mightiest fleet they had ever sent. The transmission came through again, Admiral with her gray hair and her cold eyes. "Commander Al, do you surrender?" "Yes," he said. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. "We surrender." "Good, you will maintain your current position. You will allow boarding parties to secure your vessels. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction. Do you understand?" "I understand." The transmission ended. Minutes later, human shuttles began to approach the surviving ships. They were small and sleek, nothing like the bulky transports other species used. They moved with a grace that seemed almost organic. On the endless hunger, Al stood on his bridge and waited. His officers gathered around him. Some were angry, some were terrified, all of them were confused. "How?" asked his weapons officer. "How did they do this? The Galactic Command said they were primitives, they were supposed to be helpless, they were supposed to be prey." "The Galactic Command was wrong," Al replied. "We were all wrong." The boarding party arrived. Human soldiers in armor that hummed with strange energy. They moved through the ship with perfect coordination, securing each section, disarming each crew member. They were professional. They were efficient. They were terrifying. Their captain approached Al. He was a tall human with dark skin and eyes that had seen violence, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "Commander, you will come with us. Admiral wishes to speak with you." Al nodded. He had no choice. He had no options. He had nothing left but his life, and even that was only his because the humans allowed it. As he walked through the corridors of his own ship, surrounded by human guards, he saw his crew watching. They had been conquerors. They had been harvesters. They had taken what they wanted from 100 worlds. Now they were prisoners, taken by a species they had thought was weak. "I need to understand." Al said to the Marine captain. "How did you hide this? How did you fool the Galactic Command? How did you fool everyone?" The human smiled. It was not cruel, it was almost sad. "You looked at us and saw what you expected to see: primitive rockets, chemical fuels, nations fighting each other over patches of dirt. You saw a species that had not even left its own system. But that was real, we observed it, our satellites recorded it." "Your satellites recorded exactly what we wanted them to record. We let you see the rockets, we let you see the space stations, we let you see all the things that made you believe we were helpless." The captain paused. "We have been watching the galaxy for a long time, Commander. We know how predators think. We know that predators look for weakness, so we showed you weakness. We pretended to be prey." Al felt cold despite the warmth of the ship. "You were never helpless." "No," the captain agreed. "We were never helpless. We were waiting. 40 years of waiting, Commander. 40 years of watching species like yours hunt and harvest and destroy. 40 years of preparing for the day when someone finally came for us." They reached the shuttle bay. Through the viewports, Al could see the human fleet. 2,000 ships that should not exist. 2,000 ships that could rewrite the laws of physics. 2,000 ships that had just destroyed the greatest military force in the Empire. "What will you do with us?" he asked. "That depends on you," the captain replied. "That depends on what you tell us. That depends on whether your empire can learn to change its ways." He looked at Al with something that might have been pity. "The galaxy thought we were primitives. The galaxy thought we were weak. The galaxy is about to learn that it was very, very wrong." Al stepped onto the shuttle. Behind him, his empire was already falling. The message of this defeat would spread. The Galactic Command would learn what had happened, and nothing in the universe would ever be the same. The humans had been hiding among the stars like wolves pretending to be sheep. Now the disguise was gone. Now the hunt was over. And now, Al realized, humanity had become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The news reached Axiom Prime like a shockwave. Ambassador read the reports 3 times. He could not believe them. He did not want to believe them. 300 warships destroyed. A fleet that could have conquered most species in the galaxy wiped out in less than an hour. And the attackers had not lost a single vessel. The attackers were human. Emergency sessions were called. The 47 elder species gathered in the Great Crystal Hall. But this time there was no laughter, there was no pity, there was only fear. "How is this possible?" demanded the representative of the collective. "We classified them as Category 9. Our sensors showed primitive technology. Our observations confirmed pre-emergence development." "Their technology is not in our databases," replied the Science Council. "We cannot identify their propulsion systems. We cannot understand their weapons. We cannot explain how they altered the fundamental forces of nature during the battle." "They did not alter anything," said a quiet voice. Everyone turned. It was Dr. L, the oldest physicist in the Galactic Command. She was small and frail, her scales faded with age, but her mind was still sharp. "They did not alter the forces, they rewrote them. Do you understand the difference? They changed the rules themselves." Silence filled the hall. The elder species had spent millions of years mastering the laws of physics. They had learned to bend space and time. They had learned to harness the energy of stars. They had learned to travel between galaxies, but they had never imagined that the laws themselves could be changed. "This is impossible," someone said. "And yet it happened," Dr. L replied. "The humans have found something we missed, something fundamental, something that lets them rewrite reality at will. We are no longer dealing with a primitive species. We are dealing with something we have never seen before." Stepped forward, he felt old. He felt tired. He felt a weight on his shoulders that he had never felt before. "The humans have requested a meeting. A single representative will come here to Axiom Prime. They say they want to talk." "It could be a trap," warned the ambassador. His species was in chaos. Their greatest fleet was gone. Their commander was a prisoner. They had been humiliated in front of the entire galaxy. "I do not think they need traps," said quietly. "If they wanted to destroy us, they could. We all know this now." The decision was made. The human representative would be allowed to come. What choice did they have? Admiral Wei arrived alone. She came in a small shuttle that appeared from a crack in space, just like the warships had appeared during the battle. The shuttle landed in the main bay of Axiom Prime, and she stepped out without guards or weapons or protection of any kind. She walked through the crystal halls of the station. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years watched her pass. They saw a small human female with gray hair and plain clothes. They saw someone who should have been insignificant, but they also saw the confidence in her step, the calm in her eyes, the absolute certainty that she had nothing to fear. She entered the great hall where the elder species waited. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy looked down at her, some with hatred, some with fear, some with curiosity, all with respect. Spoke first, Admiral Welcome to Axiom Prime. Thank you, Ambassador. His voice was clear and strong. It echoed through the hall. I come with a message from the people of Earth. We are listening. Looked around the room. She saw the representatives of species that had conquered worlds, built empires, shaped the destiny of the galaxy. She saw power and arrogance and ancient pride, and she saw fear. 40 years ago, she began, a young scientist on my world discovered something. She found a way to not just use the laws of physics, but to change them. When she told our leaders, they faced a choice. They could reveal this discovery to the galaxy, or they could hide it. She paused. Every being in the hall was hanging on her words. They chose to hide it, because when we looked out at the galaxy, we saw what you had built. We saw species like the who harvested worlds and enslaved populations. We saw the Galactic Command, which allowed such things to happen. We saw a universe where the weak were prey and the strong took whatever they wanted. His voice hardened. So we pretended to be weak. We let you see our chemical rockets and our space stations and our primitive probes. We let you believe we were helpless. We let you classify us as Category 9 and forget about us. And all the while, she continued, we were building ships, weapons, technology that you cannot imagine. We were preparing for the day when someone would come to harvest us. We were preparing to show the galaxy what humanity really is. Found his voice. What do you want from us? Revenge, war. Shook her head. We want a seat at this table. We want the harvesting of primitive species to end. No more collections, no more enslavement, no more treating young civilizations as resources. And if we refuse? Smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. She reached down and touched a device on her wrist. Reality shivered. Just for a moment, just for a heartbeat, but every being in the hall felt it. The fundamental forces of the universe flickered like a candle in the wind. Gravity pulled sideways, light bent in impossible curves, time itself seemed to hiccup. Then it was over, but the message was clear. If you refuse, said softly, we will not destroy you. We will simply change the rules. Everywhere you go, the physics you depend on will work differently. Your ships will not fly. Your weapons will not fire. Your stations will not hold together. We will not conquer your empires. We will simply make them impossible. No one spoke. No one moved. The elder species of the galaxy stared at this small human woman who held the power of gods in her hands. We are not your enemies, continued. Her voice was gentler now. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want to destroy what you have built. We simply want you to be better. We want you to stop preying on the weak. We want you to remember that every primitive species might one day become something greater than you imagine. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. You looked at Earth and saw a helpless world. You never considered that helplessness might be the most dangerous disguise of all. She walked out of the great hall, leaving behind a galaxy that would never be the same. In the years that followed, things changed. The Empire ended its harvesting operations. The Galactic Command created new laws protecting primitive species, and humanity took its place among the elder races, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They had been called helpless. They had been called prey. They had been dismissed and ignored and forgotten. And then they had rewritten the rules of the universe. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species that has been hiding in the dark. Never assume that primitive means weak. And never ever provoke a humanity that has learned to change the laws of physics themselves. Because the next time, they might decide to change the rules permanently. And there would be nothing in the universe that could stop them.